Hey guys, today we're going to be going over the information about brokerage services form and how to talk about the buyer's representation form. So as you can see on the screen, I've got pulled up information about brokerage. This one first. This one's a pretty standard form. I tell people that just doing business with a licensed real estate agent in the state of Texas, we are required to go over this form. And basically, the three things that it says is that there's three ways we can represent you: as an owner or seller, and or as a buyer, tenant, or as intermediary, both. And what I explain to people is that we don't do intermediary in the sense that we're going to represent somebody, both the seller and the buyer, in a single transaction. What we do is it's called intermediary by appointments, meaning that we may have the same brokerage, but there will always be two separate agents, so that way there's never any kind of conflict of interests or anything like that that could come up. And so, both when you're speaking to a seller for a listing, or with a buyer, you're just going to let them know that if for some reason they were interested in one of your properties that you might have listed, that at that point you'd have to either continue representing the seller and hand them over to another agent in the brokerage, or as or you can basically continue working with them as your buyer, and then you'd hand over the seller to another agent in the brokerage. That way you could negotiate as completely separate parties, and there'd never be a conflict of interest. So that's how I explain that. It doesn't come up at all, very often. I've never actually had a situation like that come up in the years that I've been doing it. But it's good to let people know that. It builds a little bit of trust, letting them know that you're not going to get them in a sticky situation. So once you do that, you're just going to let them know eXp Realty is the brokerage firm. The broker is Ron Dunnigan. Your licensed supervisor is Sheila Dunnigan. And then your information's there. You're going to need to have both of your buyers initial the form down below. We have it done through DocuSign, but if you're in person, you can definitely have them just hand initial it and then date the form. And that's it. That's your information about brokerage services. Usually that's pretty quick and easy. Then we'll jump over to the buyer's representation agreement. So you are going to fill out their information out here. If it's two parties, you're going to put both their names. You might want to get their address, city, state, zip. This is really just an internal document. And so, if there's things you got to cross out, or sometimes I've added like what their birthdays are just randomly up here, so that way when I take the form back to my office, I can update their information. Yeah, it doesn't have to be completely, to the letter or whatever. You can kind of, do what you need to do with it. But, get their phone numbers, email addresses. Make sure you put your information down here, so all the brokerage information goes up above here. And then put your phone number, your email address, and actually your brokerage address. Since we have our own physical office here in San Antonio, we have that listed here, but actually you'll want to check and see what the address is for eXp Realty, so that way you're using the right address. Down here, what I'll end up doing is basically skipping over. I always kind of just say that it's a 6-month agreement, but they can cancel it at any point in time. They're not locked in or anything like that. If for some reason something changes in their life, or if they just feel like they're need to do something different or not getting the service that they need, they're more than welcome to cancel and break that term. But just standard, we put 6 months, and that usually will ease their mind and get them to move on. The next part is, since I've already talked about intermediary and the information about brokerage services, I just kind of point out that, hey, here's where it talks about intermediary status and what we do as far as handing over buyers or handing over sellers, so that we're not representing both. Confidential information. So that's where I share with them that this is by signing this agreement, they are becoming a client of ours, which means that we now have a fiduciary duty to them, which means that anything like confidential information we will not share with anybody else unless that client gives us the permission to do so. And so we have their best interest at heart, and we're going to do everything that we know possible to get them a fair deal and to explain everything to them, all that good stuff. So next part is broker's fees. I do tell them that Uh, we do receive a 3% commission. That commission is paid by the seller, and that they will not owe us any money. Now, you will get some clients every now and then, because it does say down here, mine's crossed out because this particular client was one of those types, but if such persons refuse or fail to pay the broker the amount specified, client will pay the broker the amount specified less any amounts the broker receives from such persons. That's like in an instance where maybe like you're trying to help them buy a for sale by owner, or maybe a builder home or something along those lines, and that seller is not willing to pay a commission. Well, in that case, it does typically give us the permission to get that 3% from the buyers. But I just, I basically have taken it upon myself to let them know that, I'm never going to come to the buyer for a commission. I just won't do it. And so, if we happen to come across a home that I can't negotiate for, the seller to pay my commission, well, then I've just worked for free, basically. I've not ever had that situation come up, even in like a for sale by owner where, maybe they're not advertising that they're going to be paying a commission. You can still, if you bring a buyer, most of the time, let them know that, hey, I've got a buyer, will you pay my commission? They will. And so I've never come across a situation where I haven't been able to get paid. Maybe in a situation you might get 2.5% if the listing agent's only offering 2.5% versus 3%. That happens sometimes. But if that's the case, I still wouldn't, go after the buyer and tell them they have to pay my extra 0.5% or anything like that. So that's just a personal preference. If you guys, want to leave it, the way it is, and if they're going to pay your commission, the buyer, then don't cross it out. If even if that's the practice that you want, I usually don't even cross this out. Most of the people just trust me, and they don't make me cross it out. I think this is probably the first time that I've actually had somebody cross it out, but since it is, I figured I would talk about it and let you know that if that's the case, go ahead and do it. Just to make sure that you get initials by that particular area. I do talk about the protection period, just meaning that if for some reason what that is if we were to show a property to a client, and they were to cancel their agreement with us, because we do give them the ability to cancel that agreement up to 90 days after they cancel that agreement. If they end up going to purchase that property that we originally had showed them, we can go back to the seller and request a commission and try and get paid for that property, just because we were the procuring cause of it. Limitation of liability, just I usually cover that because it's in bold, and I'll say, that's basically, for you, the client, just make sure that you're safe when we're out there looking at properties. You can't come to us if you were to get hurt or something along those lines in a property and hold us liable for something like that. So, especially with kids, things of that nature, just make sure they're by your side. You're always being careful when we're out there. And then finally, in the additional notices, I just let them know that we do have to abide by fair housing laws. And what that means is that we can't discriminate about different areas of town, or if they ask us questions regarding anything about race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, familial status, sexual orientation, or gender identity, that we can't answer any of those types of questions. And that would basically be up to them to do any kind of research if that was something that was important or they needed to know more about. But we can't steer them in a certain direction or take them away from a neighborhood or anything along those lines based off of those types of protected classes. So I do point that out. I also point out this part on number C, or letter C, that says the broker is not a property inspector, surveyor, engineer, environmental assessor, or compliance inspector. And so what that basically means is they need to hire an inspection company, and we will always recommend they get one, no matter what the case is. Even if there's already one been done by the seller, it's still good practice for the buyer to get their own in every situation. And so, you don't ever want to get caught up saying like, oh, you guys don't need an inspector or anything like that. That can put you in a liable situation. So we always will recommend it and let them know that we are not these types of people. And so we always try and consult the professionals. And that's it. So really, once I go over all that, at that point, I just ask them, so does everything sound good? Do you guys have any questions? Most of the time they're nope, no questions. I say, great, well, let's get this signed up and become one of our newest clients. And then I'll have them sign it, and then of course you have to sign it, and then we'll file that with EXP. So, and then you want to keep this for your records as well. That's it. That's how you do a buyer's rep. Pretty short and sweet. Should take you, 5, 10 minutes to explain it once you've done it a couple